And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Pato Banton, minister and international reggae legend from Birmingham, England, who has recorded and toured with UB40, Sting, Peter Gabriel, English Beat, and more. Pato is also a UFO experiencer and an expert in the Urantia Book, which we're going to talk about and more. Pato, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. It's really nice to be here to talk to you today.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And if you don't mind, can we start with what was your spiritual background like before you found out about the Urantia Book?
Ooh, okay. So as a child, I only had maybe two experiences with my grandmother before I was 6. No, between the age of 6 and 8, I had a couple experiences with my grandmom going to her Baptist church, which was very, very hyper spiritual. You know, they would get in the spirit, speak in tongues, and really get excited, which was a bit scary for me as a kid because I didn't understand why they were speaking this strange language. And then I moved to Birmingham at the age of 8 to be reunited with my mother. And when I got to Birmingham in England, my mom's boyfriend was actually a Jamaican DJ. And our home was the local community party house, late night party house. So from the age of 8, I became the security guard for these late night illegal parties. And I was the lookout. I was a security guy. I would open the door, see if the police are there, let people in, close the door, open the door, let them out, look again, and I did that, for quite a few years until I was about 12, 13. And then reggae music came along. And when reggae music came, it came with a message about God, because my mom and my stepdad never really were involved in any religion. They never really spoke about religion unless they were making fun of the Bible. They'd find some stories in the Bible and start laughing about it. So when reggae music came along, these Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, all these amazing artists from Jamaica started to talk about Jah and God and the Most High, and talk about, black man, learn your roots, learn your identity. So my first quest as a teenager, once I got into reggae music, was to find out who I was. Where did I come from physically? And so growing up in England as a black kid, all we knew that was we came from Jamaica. But now Jamaicans were telling us, you come from Africa. So my first quest was to find out where did I come from in Africa, and to trace my roots back to my family in Jamaica. And then my second quest was to find out where I came from spiritually. So I started studying the Bible at first, which was what the Rastas and the reggae community read. And I became dissatisfied that I couldn't get all the answers to my questions. So I then started a 15-year spiritual search of as much spiritual literature on the planet as I could get my hands on. And after 15 years of studying the world's religions, studying metaphysics, reading so many books while I was advancing on my career as a musician, traveling with a library sometimes in my tour bus, one day I just became so dissatisfied after this 15-year search. Not that it wasn't a satisfying search, it was a satisfying search as far as learning so much about different religions and different religious leaders and different philosophies. But as far as getting to the root of some of the serious questions I had, I couldn't get the answers. And I realized that there was no human being on this planet that could answer those questions. So one night I went out into the middle of the street and just looked up to the heavens and said, God, please, I've got this list of questions. I'm trying my best to find answers, but I can't. Can you please send an angel, send a sign, send something so that I can know the truth and have all of these mysteries that are bothering me answered? And a week later, I went to LA and met a trombone player from the Untouchables. And he said to me, Pato, I just found this book. And he said, this book freaked me out. He says, I felt a connection with the universe and ran outside naked. I'm like, where's the book? So he said, the book's over there. It's almost as though he was kind of afraid of the book. He said, the book's over there on the bookshelf. So I went and grabbed the book, opened the book, and in the contents, and all of a sudden my whole body started tingling. And I felt as though I was levitating. And I looked at the authors, and one of my big questions one of the people that I was trying to find in my 15-year search was a brother by the name of Melchizedek. And in the Bible, it says, this Melchizedek having no beginning of days, no ending of life, like a son of God, having no genealogy, no mother, no father. And I was like, what kind of guy is this that can have no mother, no father? And just to make sure that you know that it's not a mistake, they make sure to tell you he has no genealogy. And I was like, I got to find who this person is. And there was nowhere I could find anything except for some secret order of Muslims in New York that had a little bit of text about Melchizedek, but nothing to really jump and shout about. So I opened the book and I looked at the authors, and it said, author, Melchizedek, 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 one without name and number, brilliant evening star, archangel, Melchizedek, 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 Melchizedek. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm looking for. And I turned to the forward, and the forward said, there is much confusion on your world regarding religion. And I'm like, on your world, this is definitely from another place. And I asked my friend if I could have the book. He said, with pleasure. I took the book from him that day, which was maybe 35, 40 years ago. And I have not stopped reading that book. And I'm still finding new things in that book 40 years later. And it still continues to blow my mind.
For the people who didn't watch my video last week with Brian Belitzos, who is also an expert with Urantia, I just want to let people know quickly that the book is over 2,000 pages long. It's basically set up into 4 parts, which is our creation. Part 2 is our local universe. Part 3 is the history of Earth. And Part 4 is the life and teachings of Jesus. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, what are some of the other questions that you wanted to have answered that Urantia gave you those answers?
Number one, in most of the world's religions, they teach that God is our Heavenly Father. And I didn't grow up knowing my real dad. And none of the stepdads I had ever spoke to me about spirituality or God or my identity. So when I found out that God was my true dad, my spiritual dad, the source of my life and my identity, I wanted to know where my dad lived. I wanted to know the address, the physical address of my spiritual father. And of course, there's no book on the planet that they just tell you heaven. or nirvana or paradise. And the Urantia book told me the exact address of where God lives. I also wanted to know about Adam and Eve. I wanted to know, how can God put Adam and Eve in a garden, and then they have two boys, Cain and Abel. And then Cain kills his brother Abel, which means it should just be Adam, Eve, and Cain in the Garden of Eden. But when God speaks to Cain, God says to Cain, "Where is your brother?" And Cain said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God said, "Your brother's blood cries to me from the ground. You will be banished from the garden." And Cain says, "No, this is too much for me to bear. I will be a fugitive in the land, and when they find me, they will kill me." So that's number one. How can you be a fugitive outside of the garden if there's nobody outside of the garden? If it's only you and your mom and dad? Then it says in the Bible that Cain went north to the land of Nod. So he went to a place that already existed. He didn't go to the place and called it Nod. He went north to the land of Nod and found a wife and built a city. And I'm saying to myself, he didn't find a wife and build a hut or a little village or a small town. He built a city. Now, to build a city, you need a lot of people with a lot of different skills. So Cain built a city in the land of Nod. Then I wanted to know, who were these giants that were living on the land? I think they call them Nephilim in some scriptures. Where did they come from that were sleeping with the daughters of men? These giants, where did they come from? So there was all these different questions, you know. Also, I wanted to know, who was the Archangel Michael? Because in the Bible and most of the scriptures I found around the world, they all say that Gabriel was the highest celestial being in our universe, was the Archangel Gabriel. But in the book of Revelation, I found that when it was time for the judgment of Lucifer and the fallen angels, Michael told Gabriel to go and bind Lucifer and throw him in a bottomless pit. And I'm saying to myself, how can Michael give Gabriel an order if Gabriel is the highest celestial being? Then I realized that, hold on, there is one being higher than Gabriel, and that would be the Son of God, according to Scripture. And the Son of God, as we know him in human form, would be Jesus. So I'm saying to myself, is it possible that Jesus could be Michael in his celestial form? And I found, is it the Jehovah's Witness or the Seventh-day Adventist? One of them, they actually say that Jesus, before he came to our planet to live the life as a human being, is actually Michael. His name is Michael. So when I found the Urantia book, and I was making all this stuff up in my head just based on scripture. Then when I found the Urantia book, it says, the creator of your local universe is Christ Michael of Nebadan. Your universe is called Nebadan. You are one of 700,000 local universe with 10 million inhabited planets on each local universe. And the creator of your universe is Christ Michael and the Mother Spirit, otherwise known as the Shekinah Spirit or the Holy Spirit. The Urantia book teaches that they both came to our universe when it was just a vast open space and started creating all of the planets and all of the suns and all the stars that we see, and that their ultimate goal is to create 10 million worlds with intelligent life living on them. striving towards a goal of light and life, but they have to evolve to that goal. So I had all of these questions and some more, but those were the main ones. And it was impossible for me to find the answers, but I found them now.
So you're saying that Archangel Michael is Jesus?
Well, they don't call him an archangel. He's actually called a creator son of God. We know him as the Bible knows him as the only begotten Son of God. But in the Urantia book, it says he's the only begotten Son of God in our universe. In the vast, grand universe, there are actually 700,000 Michael sons who are creators, who go to their own universe. Like a farmer who's got a few sons, he allocates different parts of the land. You know, one can do the animal husbandry, one can do the farming. You know, the father gives his sons or daughters different areas that they take care. So the universe is one big cultivation for God, I guess. And he sends his sons to different parts of the universe to create their own unique universes. Yeah, so Jesus Christ, his real name in our universe, in English, in the English translation, is Michael. And it's interesting, in Hebrew, the word Mikael means God with us.
In the Urantia book, they also talk about the Adamic race that came to the earth and genetically improved humans. What can you share with us about that story?
Well, that was a plan. Before Adam and Eve came, is when is it the Anunnaki or the Nephilim, the 9-foot tall beings came to our planet, and the Urantia book teaches that there was 100 of them, 50 males and 50 females, who had come from other planets, but they were very advanced, and they created a community and came down with a very high celestial being who was called a planetary prince. And his name was Caligastia. And they set up a place close to the Mediterranean, a center of culture and teaching. But when Lucifer rebelled in our universe, Caligastia went along with the rebellion. He joined forces with Lucifer. And Lucifer also infiltrated, I believe, another 47 planets in our local system. And Lucifer was a much lower being than Michael. Lucifer was actually created by Michael. So Lucifer recognized Michael as his universe father, but Lucifer never recognized God. He didn't believe that God existed because he had never gone to the central universe where God resides. Lucifer had only existed in our local universe. So anyway, the first visitation of celestial beings went sour because they joined the Lucifer rebellion. Half of them did. But the leader did, which made it worse. So after that visitation, the second visitation was Adam and Eve. They came down, and some of the loyal beings from the first visitation knew that Adam and Eve were due to come in a few thousand years, so they prepared the Garden of Eden for the arrival of Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve were also 9 foot, 10 foot tall. They were violet in color, and they emanated light. And the plan for Adam and Eve was to multiply their seed, was to have children who would also have children. And then they were supposed to accumulate a community, a family of about 500,000 And then once they had accumulated 500,000 violet Adamic beings, male and female, they would then start to invite human beings from every race into their community to marry with their children, and then to have children, so that the black race, white race, yellow race, red race, green race, orange race, all of the races that were about at that time would be biologically uplifted with Adamic blood. And then these children would go back to the races that their parent came from, and then interbreed with each race. So each race would get this biologic DNA uplift that would make us live longer, be able to assimilate space energy better, and it would also make us more intellectual. It would grow our intellectual capacity, and it would also make us more spiritual as spiritual beings, to connect directly with God and with the spiritual influences in our universe. But the Adamic race, Adam and Eve, got infiltrated by Caligastius and Lucifer's associates, who came up with a plan to speed things up. And when Eve accepted this plan, she defaulted and lost her life force energy, and the tree of life, which used to give them energy to live forever on the planet, the tree of life was no longer accessible to her. She could no longer assimilate the energy from the tree of life. And when Adam realized that Eve had gone down the wrong path, he decided that he couldn't live without her. So he decided to join her in her sin. Even though they didn't join the Lucifer rebellion against God, they were still loyal to God, but they had just fallen prey to a plan that they thought would help humanity, but it was not the divine plan. And so by going and trying to do things in their own way, they strayed away from the plan of God. And so the Adamic plan fell short. Before they managed to accumulate the number, it fell very way short of the number that they were supposed to accumulate. And then they had to leave the garden because there was a war that happened. And then the celestial beings came down and says, Adam and Eve, you will live and die as human beings. But any of your children that you have given birth to, if they want to stay, they can stay. But any of them that want to come back up to the celestial realms, they can jump on our spaceship and head up with us right now. So some of the children left the planet and some of them stayed on the planet. And the few that did stay did biologically uplift humanity in a very, very small way, but not to the level that we could be if they didn't fail.
Why did Lucifer rebel in the first place? And while we're at it, is Lucifer still affecting this planet or any of his associates?
Well, Lucifer is what's known as a system sovereign. And by the way, Lucifer, Satan, and the devil are three different people. Lucifer is known as a Lanandex son, a very high order of son, but still only within this local universe. He's never been outside of Nebadan. But he was responsible for something like, 48 planets, something like that. His lieutenant or his personal assistant was Satan. And then the planetary prince, Caligastia, is the devil. And once he joined the Lucifer rebellion, he lost his power to leave this planet. The reason why Lucifer rebelled, they said that Lucifer was one of the most brilliant beings of his order, one of the most intellectually magnificent and beautiful beings in our entire local universe. And he had accomplished many, many, many missions on behalf of Christ Michael successfully within this realm. But all of the accolades and all of the praises got to him, and he started to love himself. And pride and self-love were Lucifer's downfall. He thought he knew better than his administrators. He started to question whether what they were doing was the best way to do things. And because he was administrating so many other planets on his own, because he was sovereign of those planets, that means he had the freedom to govern the way he wanted to govern. Because he had so much power and so much pride, it got to his head to the point where he decided he didn't want to do it the way he had been instructed to do it, and that he wanted to give each planet their own liberty and freedom. But that's not supposed to be given, that's supposed to be earned. He shortcutted and short-circuited the divine plan, and because he had never been outside of this local universe, he'd never seen God. He'd never seen the majesty of the central isle, the nuclear isle of paradise. He'd never seen the most amazing light in the universe. But he did believe that Jesus Christ, or as he would know, Christ Michael, he did recognize that Christ Michael was his suffering. So when he rebelled against Michael's administration. Then he turned Satan over to his side, and then him and Satan launched a massive attack across the universe to recruit as many celestial beings as they could. And many, many, many seraphims, cherubims, omniaphims, Lananandex, Verandadex, many, many lower angels joined him. And can you imagine what it's like being alive for maybe 20 billion years, doing the same thing over and over again, following instructions, and then all of a sudden someone comes and says, hey guys, you don't have to follow the rules anymore. You can do things your own way. It's called liberty, freedom and liberty. But the Urantia book teaches us that there is true liberty and false liberty. True liberty is freedom based on living in harmony with the will of God. False liberty is living in harmony with your own self-determination, with no consideration for universe administration. And in this universe, there is a very simple rule: to be or not to be. To be, you have to live in harmony with I am. When you stop living in harmony with the source of life, when you stop living in harmony with the source of oxygen, you have to decide that you no longer want to breathe. You cannot say, I don't agree with the giver of oxygen, but want to continue using his oxygen. Once you say, I don't want nothing to do with you, then you are rejecting everything that the giver of life is giving. And the opposite of life is to choose death. If there is an eternal entity who is responsible for existence, To go against the source of existence is to choose non-existence. It's not that the giver of this existence is taking away your existence, or taking away your life, or taking away your oxygen. You have just refused anything that that giver of life is giving. If I'm giving someone a ride to work every day, and they decide that they don't want to have anything to do with me anymore, the ride is no longer available. They need to walk or get the bus. And so, in Lucifer proclaiming liberty and freedom for all, but also proclaiming that God does not exist, he just cut all of his followers off, including himself, from the source of life. And so their gift, the celestial beings who joined him, their gift of eternal life started to fizzle out. So Michael offered mercy. When Michael came to this planet, the Lucifer rebellion had been going on in our universe for about 100,000 years. And Michael and Gabriel and the celestial beings had allowed the Lucifer rebellion. They could have stopped it on day one. They could have actually stopped it before it even started, because there are celestial beings who can read the minds of every personality in the universe, and they can know when something is not right. They don't use this ability to judge us or to condemn us, but they do use it to understand the status of each being's thinking. So when Lucifer started to think like this, they knew it was coming. And they warned Michael and said, Michael, one of your system sovereigns is about to lose the plot. And Michael said, let him go ahead. It's time for a testing in our universe. Everything's been going smoothly. Let's see what happens. And so once the Lucifer rebellion was going on for 100,000 years, and once our planetary prince, who was supposed to be guiding us towards the light, once he turned to darkness, Michael said, I have to choose a planet to live my life as a human being so I can understand what it's like to be a human being. And he had already been to 6 other planets to know what it was like to be 6 different orders of beings, from the highest to the lowest. His 7th and last bestowal was as a human being, and he chose our planet because it was in a state of emergency. Because not only did we mess up the first visitation, Adam and Eve also messed up, you know? So we were in a double jeopardy. So when he came to this planet, there was a lot of celestial beings that were possessing people, jumping into people's bodies. We have a history of this recorded. And there were devils on the planet appearing to human beings and scaring us. And then we would start worshiping these fallen angels because we thought that they were gods. And so when Michael came here and lived his life as Jesus Christ, he ended the Lucifer rebellion. Lucifer was thrown into jail. Satan was thrown into jail. All of the fallen angels on the planet were taken away and thrown into jail. They were all offered mercy. And the ones that accepted the offer of mercy are right now going through rehabilitation. But Lucifer and Satan and the ones who have refused mercy are awaiting their non-existence, basically, which is coming eventually. So that is the status of the rebellion right now, is that it's actually going through a court case. They're calling it Gabriel versus Lucifer, the adjudication. Our planet is right now waiting. We're on the cusp of waiting for another visitation of celestial beings who will come and live on our planet and be visible to human beings again. You know, all of these ancient alien programs that
Yeah.
they've got on the TV,
Mhm.
talking about all of these Anunnaki and pyramids and all of these different places where celestial beings were actually alive and visible, working with human beings on the planet. Well, all of it's true. All of it's true. And it's all in the Urantia book. And but the Urantia book gives us more information because they're still trying to find the answers. The Urantia book has all of the answers. And the Urantia book tells us that eventually there will be another group of visitors who will come not only to biologically uplift us, but also to spiritually uplift us and to intellectually uplift us. And it could be just another Adam and Eve coming back to do it again. Or it could be a Melchizedek and an Adam and Eve. It could be another planetary prince and a Melchizedek and an Adam and Eve, and a score of other celestial beings that come down as a big committee to come and help uplift this planet and bring us out of the darkness that we're in right now.
Do you think this will happen anytime soon? Because I feel like we're far from paradise here.
That is my prayer. But human beings always want things to happen in their lifetime. But according to the history of revelations, there's usually hundreds of thousands of years between each revelation. The last revelation we had on our planet, or the last two, was Melchizedek, which was 4,000 years ago. And then Jesus, which was 2,000 years after Melchizedek and 2,000 years ago. And then the most recent revelation we have, which they say is the Urantia book, is the fifth epochal revelation to our world, has come 2,000 years after Jesus. They are saying that the Urantia book was released 1,000 years ahead of its time, just after World War II, because humanity was at a juncture where we were asking more questions than we had the answers to. And we were just in the process of getting the first printing press. So we now have the Urantia book, which has only been out about 70 years and is 1,000 years ahead of its time. So in logical calculations, we have a minimum. This is only logical, okay? But spiritual things don't always happen according to logic. But according to my logical brain, if the Urantia book is right now 930 years ahead of its release date, we have at least until then before we have a real physical, visual visitation, because the Urantia book is supposed to be preparing humanity for the next visitation. It's supposed, because it explains to us who these beings are. There's information in there that has never been available before that will prepare us for the next visitation, intellectually and spiritually, because it does have the ability to upload you spiritually. Worst case scenario is that it would fall in sync with Melchizedek 2,000 years, Christ Michael 2,000 years, the Urantia book 2,000 years, and then the next visitation in 2,000 years. But spiritually, it could happen tomorrow. They could decide the court case is adjudicated, it's over, the Lucifer rebellion is squashed. Let's open the channels that used to be open during the times of the Great Pyramids. Let's open these vortexes again for interstellar communication, and let's go down and start helping to rebuild the spiritual culture of humanity. So, you know, it could be beyond our lifetime, or it could be within our lifetime, but I'm sure once it does happen, we'll know about it.
Well, it appears that ET contact is increasing. So
Exactly.
maybe they're on their way.
And I just heard that there's some very big people in our world right now are planning to create an ET community, a place where ETs can come and discuss world issues with us and universe issues with us in a safe and comfortable environment. That is also another preparatory step in the right direction to receiving another celestial visitation.
Now, you've had your own UFO sighting, right?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I was in Mammoth Lakes. I was doing a concert in Mammoth Lakes. And after the concert, about 15 of us went to the hot springs in Mammoth Lakes. And it was snowing. There was snow everywhere. And me and the band, my brother, and some other people went down to these to the hot springs. And when we got there, there was a few people already in this really big pool. And one of them was an astronomer, and he had a telescope, and he was telling everyone, look at this planet, look at that planet. And I looked in the telescope, and I was blown away. First time I ever looked into a telescope. And the details of the planets that he was showing me was just so amazing. And all of a sudden, I went back to sit in the pool. And all of a sudden, this vehicle was hovering over us. The lights just came on. And this vehicle, about the size of a car, with 3 lights under it, was just hovering over us. And we're like, when I say over us, I mean about 50 yards away from the pool in the air, but not very high, about 30 feet in the air, not very high. And it's just hovering. And I'm like, what is that? And this was before all the drones that we're seeing everywhere now. This was years ago, about 30 years ago. And this thing's just hovering and it's not making any noise. Now, drones make a lot of noise. This thing made no noise whatsoever. It was just sitting there. And we're all saying to ourselves, what is that? And then it moved and stopped. And it made no sound. And then it moved again quickly and stopped. And we're like, what is that? Everyone in the pool is seeing what I'm seeing. And then it just went, shoo. And as far as my human eyes could see, it just went into the universe at a very high velocity. And all that was left was a cloud. And the astronomer told us that it left the space it was in at such a high velocity, it actually vaporized the airspace that it was in, and left a small cloud. But there was no sound. And we were all just freaked out. And nobody could say what it was. It wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't an airplane. There was nothing that we could say that this vehicle could be. And my brother, who was not spiritual at the time and not into UFOs or anything that he can't see, he was the first one that said, that's a UFO.
Was it the traditional saucer shape?
No, it didn't look like a saucer. It was more of a triangle shape. It was strange. And because of the lights that were so bright under it, you couldn't really see the vehicle with clarity. You were just mostly seeing the lights just moving, and then shoo. It was just like, wow.
Had you already discovered the Urantia book before this?
Ooh. I think I had. It was still fresh. I had not long discovered it, because I remember that I was trying to teach my brother some of the life and teachings of Jesus from the Urantia book.
Is it possible that this UFO was sort of a confirmation of the truth of the book for you?
I think there is some truth in that, because I remember that I did read in the Urantia book that if there was an emergency, that if our if mankind destroyed our planet to the point of no return, that the plan of human evolution would not change, and that what would happen is the celestial academy or celestial visitators would come down with vehicles and lift a large portion of humanity off the planet and bring them to another planet to continue human evolution. And at that point, I had come to the conclusion that these would be spacecraft, spaceships to come and bring us to another world through space and time, because they would not disintegrate us, physically and then reassemble us. They would probably put us to sleep and then wake us up on the next world, but we would still be in our physical form. So that would need a physical vehicle to do that type of work, So, and I've always been open-minded about, other life. And the Urantia book does teach there's a lot of life on other worlds. So it makes sense. And it teaches us that there is life on a neighboring planet. So I've always been open-minded about, spacecraft and space beings.
Does the Urantia book talk about reincarnation? And if not, what does it say happens to us once we die?
The Urantia book is very clear about reincarnation. The Urantia book says that there is no reincarnation. The Urantia book says that what we as human beings, what God has planned for human beings, is known as an ascension plan. All of the celestial beings that come to our world are known as descending beings. They are sent down to our world to help send us up. Human beings are known as ascending beings, which means that when we die, we wake up on a higher plane, in a new world, on a higher level, and we are surrounded with higher intelligences and higher spiritual beings who then train us for the next world above that. And then, after being trained extensively on multiple worlds in our universe, because in the scriptures it says a human being cannot see God unless he or she is perfect. You cannot stand in the presence of God unless you are perfect. Now, as we know, when human beings die, they are far from perfect. So the ascension plan is also known as the perfection plan. We are trained over many, many years through many worlds in this universe and in other universes closer to the central universe, so that by the time we attain the central universe, we are perfected beings, ready to stand in the presence of our Creator, who's perfect. And that's one of the few mandates that has gone out from paradise, where God says, "Be ye perfect, even as I am." Now, there is a reason why some people feel as though they've lived more than once. And that is because of these beings known as thought adjusters. Thought adjusters are a fragment of God. Okay? A fragment of God. Now, if you have a bowl of sugar, Jeff, and you take 1 grain, so you've got a big bowl of sugar, and you take 1 tiny grain out of that bowl, is that grain still 100% sugar?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes too. Even though it's been separated from the whole, it's still, its constituents are still made up 100% of every other grain of sugar that's in the bowl. Yeah?
Yep.
So it is with these grains of sugar that God sends into the universe. I like to use the sugar analogy. When God sends a fragment of himself to live in us, when we take our first breath or when we make our first moral decision, this fragment of God in us becomes our teacher, becomes our guide, becomes our potential to become eternal. Now, the personality of God stays in the bowl of sugar. So when God sends a fragment, he sends a fragment of his essence, of his infinity to live in us. That's why Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, because God is within you. But what this fragment doesn't have, the one thing this fragment needs, is personality. We have personality. We have 100% personality, but we don't have infinity or eternity. This fragment of God has no personality. It's neutral. That's why when it goes into a human being, it can adapt to become male or female. So it adapts to the personality of the being that it lives in. It has eternity and infinity, but it doesn't have personality. So God gives us the gift of life. And the greatest gift that we can give to God is our personality, which God gave us in the first place. But now we give it willingly. That is the greatest gift that we can give to God. Because life is not a gift if it's forced upon us. So we have the ability to say, no, thank you. We have the ability to accept eternal life and then go on that march to attain it. Or we can say, you know something? One lifetime is enough for me. I don't want any more. Thank you. No, thank you. Now, even though that might sound strange, some human beings actually say, I don't want to live beyond this lifetime. And I'm not talking about the people who commit suicide. Because usually when people commit suicide, it can be for mental issues, or it can be because they just can't deal with the struggle of human life on this dark planet. Because it's stressful to pay the bills. It's stressful to do the taxes every 12 months. It's stressful to pay the bills and put food on the table and deal with the social arena of antagonisms and drama. You know what I mean? It's hard to find a loving relationship and let it and make it last without getting heartbroken. There are so many factors to go into why people decide, I just can't deal with life anymore. But those people are not saying, I never want to exist anymore, or I don't want God's plan for me to ascend or eternal life. Because I know once those people commit suicide and they wake up on the next worlds, which we call the mansion worlds, they're going to wake up in a world where they don't have to pay bills, where there is no pain, no cancer, no irreversible diseases. They're going to wake up in a world where they're surrounded with beings of light who are loving them more than a human being could love them. And when they get there, they're going to say, I'm ready for the eternal journey now. I'm ready to embrace life in its fullness. But there are some people who get to a stage where they say, you know something, this gift of life, I don't want it. I don't want it now and I won't want it later. And when a person makes that intelligent decision, the spirit that lives within them leaves them. And when that spirit, that fragment of God leaves a human being, they are written in the universe as dead. They can live for another 30, 40 years. They can get married and have kids. But because they have intelligently made the final choice that they don't want anything to do with God or the life he has given them or the ascending scheme, they are registered as dead. So when they die, they just go to sleep and they don't wake up. Now, what happens to the spirit of that person who has rejected it? Oh, there's another thing. Some people get irritated by the spirit that lives within them. Sometimes they say they hear voices, or they feel as though something's trying to influence them, or there's something within them that they don't like. And those people as well also reject this gift. Because the spirit fragment of God is trying to uplift you, is trying to get you to think more spiritually, is trying to get you to think outside of the box, and trying to get you to embrace the truth that you are a universe creature. You're not just a material robot. You know, you're not only confined within the realms of this planet, your mind can actually take you beyond our world. You can travel the universe through your mind circuit, you know? So this fragment of God, this takes all of your memories. It keeps all of the memories that it had with you. Now, the goal of this fragment of God is to find a partner, because it still doesn't have a personality. And without a personality, this fragment of God cannot find expression. So I'm talking to you and you're talking to me because we have the gift of personality. And through your personality, you can express yourself to me in your own unique way. No one expresses themselves like Jeff. No one expresses themselves like Pato Banton. I am unique in the entire universe. So this fragment of God is seeking for expression. So it has to wait for another life to be born so that it can try again. But when it tries again in that new life form, it brings with it the memories of the previous life of the person that rejected it. And if this has happened to this spirit 3 or 4 times, those 3 or 4 life experiences are also your possession if that experienced fragment of God indwells you and brings all of those expressions. Now, if one of the lives that this adjuster experienced was a great guitarist, you're going to just, for some strange reason, be able to play the guitar. If it was a painter, a scientist, whatever gifts that adjuster acquired from the various personalities, those gifts are yours. And what's even more amazing, that because this fragment of God is God, 100% God, everything that God is also yours. And everything that God knows is also yours. But it takes eternity to access all of that data and have it downloaded. And that is the beauty of this ascension plan, is that as we're ascending, we're becoming one with this spirit that indwells us, and we're becoming more godlike, to the point where when we start, celestial beings can say, that's the personality, that's the fragment of God. But over a period of time, a fusion happens, and they can no longer tell the difference between the personality and the fragment because they've become one. We have given the fragment of God personality, and the fragment of God has given us infinity. So we become a unique personal expression of God.
I can understand how a person wouldn't want to come back to Earth, but it's fascinating for me to think about someone who just doesn't want to exist at all anymore. And it must be pretty common because so many people claim they, know about their past lives.
And there are also devil worshippers who have chosen to worship Lucifer. And in doing so, they are aligning themselves with non-existence, because that's all that Lucifer can offer anyone. Even if you gain the world, even if you become a billionaire and have a mansion or 20 mansions and have all the cars and everything in this world, you got nothing if you don't have life beyond this world. So, and I still think that even some people who unintelligently choose the path of darkness, I still think some of them have an opportunity to be redeemed or salvaged. But it's when somebody intelligently chooses, no, I don't want this. That is when that choice.
Why do you think Urantia is not more known worldwide? Is it because it's being hidden from the people, or is it just too overwhelming with 2,000 plus pages?
I would say so. It is very, very overwhelming. It is, remember, they said it was 1,000 years ahead of its time. It's been here 70 years, so it's 930 years ahead of its time, which means that the intellectual capacity of humanity will rise over the next 900 years. It will rise. And it says the book is also will be more accessible to humanity when more and more people have a desire to find the truth. Now, the Bible's only been around a few thousand years ago. The New Testament's, less than 2,000 years old. People are asking questions. People are asking questions that none of the religious books can answer. And when that happens, people turn to metaphysics. And metaphysics is high intellectual, spiritual thinking, but also guessing. And revelation takes the guessing out. It's metaphysics without guessing. Because the only person that can tell you what lies beyond this universe is a person who's been beyond this universe. So when a celestial being writes a paper explaining what's beyond this universe, you now have access to revelation. So, 2,000 pages, concepts that have never been heard about before, like God's indwelling spirit, which they call the thought adjuster, like universes upon universes, like 700,000 Christ Michael creator sons who go into the universe. All of these different concepts are challenging for people, just like UFO sightings are challenging for a lot of people on this planet, you know. Regardless of how many people say, I saw a UFO, which is thousands and thousands, you still got millions of skeptics, you know? So the true UFO seeker will find the truth because it's there. The true spiritual seeker will find the truth because the truth is there.
How have you incorporated the teachings of the Urantia book into your music?
Okay. Well, first, the same thing when I started making reggae music. The reason why I decided to become a reggae artist was because the music had inspired me. It had inspired me to find my roots as a Black youth. It inspired me to take on the challenge of finding my spiritual roots. And in this 15-year search, I would always use my music as a way of expressing my findings. And that was the beauty of reggae music, was that they were singing about their spiritual experiences, their journey, you know, what was inspiring them, what was uplifting them, and they were presenting it in a way that was uplifting the younger generation. And so I wanted to use my music to be positive, you know, to inspire people not to give up, but to keep searching for themselves, you know, to seek truth, to find upliftment, to love God, to love people, you know, to look for ways to improve the world. So I was already doing this just based on being a reggae musician, and then doing it based on being a truth seeker. Then when I found the Urantia book, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. And and I never finished school. I left school at the age of about 13, 14. So I never finished school, and I never got a college education. And I never got a university education. And a lot of Urantia scholars have told me that the Urantia book is on the level of universe education. It is that challenging. But I was so intrigued, I was so hungry for truth, that when I found the Urantia book, I had a Bible, I had a metaphysical Bible, I had an Apocrypha, I had a Bible dictionary, and I had an Oxford dictionary. Those were the books that I traveled with to support my study of the Urantia book. And so everybody in my band said I was mad because I changed. And they said that I was studying the book of the devil. My family was nervous because I was traveling with this big book and other books, and they had no desire to learn anything outside of the scope of knowledge they had already attained. And so I was kind of getting castigated for my search of truth and finding the Urantia book. But I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. You know, even though my friends and family didn't understand me, I was happy. I had a purpose. I knew what my purpose was, which was to be a good person. And so I started incorporating the lessons from the book into my music. I have an album called Destination Paradise, which is actually free right now on Bandcamp, bandcamp.com, Pato Banton. I have about 8 albums on that site that are free right now. And I also did a 7 CD box set called The Words of Christ, where I took all the words that Jesus said and put them onto 7 CDs. And they are also on the Bandcamp site for free, with some beautiful music behind me narrating the words. There's actually 50 lessons from what Jesus said. And so it has influenced me. It has influenced my thinking. He's influenced my music to the point where my fans started asking me if I would officiate their weddings or christen their children or baptize them or bury their family members. So, and that was just from me singing my music and being an inspiration to them. And so I realized that I needed to get an ordination to marry them, at least to marry them. So I got an online ordination and became a minister. But the Urantia Book also says that he who would be greatest, or this is what Jesus said, who would be greatest must become a server of all. We don't achieve greatness by taking on big titles or wearing long gowns and wearing lots of jewelry. We become great by serving others. And so I call myself a minister of the verb, because the verb is doing something. And so that's what I do, I serve. And the greatest example of service for me is Jesus. And he inspires me through his words and his life, and I do my best to inspire others. So I'm also a minister now. I am also a teacher of the Urantia Book. I am also a teacher of spirituality. I am also a counselor. I provide marriage counseling, conflict resolutions, youth training. And my fans across America invite me to marry them in Hawaii, Florida, North Carolina, California, everywhere. They invite me to marry them. I go and marry them, try and do a concert while I'm in their state. And I also have buried a few of my fans as well. You know, they've asked me to be the person that buries them, and I've gone and done that work for them and their family. And it's a blessing. I get to know my fans on a deeper level, and I get to know their family on a deeper level, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's amazing. I think for my audience, the first songs that they should listen to of yours, which I think would resonate them mostly, would be Never Give In, because it's about overcoming your struggles in life. And that's probably my personal favorite. And then one of your newest songs called Better Place.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Where people are on the other side, because a lot of people in my audience are people who are grieving over the loss of loved ones, and these videos bring them peace.
Yes. So Never Give In is an actual album. And it has songs like Guan and some fun songs, some spiritual songs, some political songs, but it's a really positive album. And one of my most recent albums is Destination Paradise, which also has Better Place on it, which talks about what happens when we die and staying positive and knowing that we'll meet again on the other side. And yeah, the album has been very, very well received as well.
Does the Urantia Book say anything about speaking in tongues?
Yeah. The Urantia Book says that the reason why the apostles spoke in tongues when they did was because there were people from all different languages gathering in Jerusalem at the Passover during that time. And the apostles, actually, some of them spoke different languages. So when the Spirit of truth come down on them on the day of Pentecost, they went out to proclaim the good news, the gospel, in the different tongues that they knew. It wouldn't have been of any benefit to anybody if they went out just saying, and nobody understood them. They went out speaking languages that people understood. So in essence, the Urantia Book is saying there's no real need for people to be speaking in tongues. But we do know that people get emotional and spiritually high when they're in church and in service. And that may be one of the things that they enjoy, or what comes out of them in their spiritual expression. But there is no real need to speak in another tongue unless you're speaking to someone who cannot understand the language that you're speaking.
Have you ever been to Ethiopia and been to Lalibela?
I have been to Lalibela recently, yes.
How
And
was
I
that?
have been to Ethiopia 3 times so far. And Lalibela was absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
That's a place I'd like to visit.
Yep, it was absolutely beautiful. The history is still there. The stone temples built into the ground are still there. It's just amazing. That's where the history of Christianity is still being untouched.
And for those that don't know, it's basically the church is, instead of built on top of the ground, they dug it out of the ground, right?
That's right. They carved into the ground
It's amazing.
and in stone. They dug downwards in stone and made buildings in the ground.
Yeah.
And it's just mind-boggling. It's just wow. You go in those churches and there's a whole underground network, and all the churches are linked through this underground network as well.
I believe that the second translation of the Bible is Ethiopian. Is that
I
true?
believe so too. I believe so too.
Oh.
One of the oldest Bibles is found in Ethiopia.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Ooh. Well, my last positive message to everyone is embrace life to its fullest. The ups and the downs, the pretty, the ugly, the highs and the lows, life and death. Embrace it all. But embrace it all knowing that you are a child of God. You are a child of the universe. You are special, unique, and you have a purpose, and you have a destiny. And regardless of all of the strife and the problems that this material world presents to us, there is a beautiful future ahead for all of us. So embrace every moment of this earth experience and do your best to plant seeds of future hope. Help people when you can find the opportunity to help them, and share the love that is within you that needs expression. And remember to be happy.
Pato, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Blessings, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.